throughout this session. Someone is saying they're unable to see the screen. I just want to, okay, but others are saying they can see the screen. Okay, all right, so I'm assuming most of you can see the screen. Okay, okay, great, perfect. All right, so here's a question for everyone who's joined us. I know we began this year with a whole different set of goals, and very quickly the world changed for all of us. And now we're either resetting our goals or questioning our goals, or really wondering how we go about fulfilling the goals that we set. So I'd love to hear from some of you. Feel free to use the chat box if that's easier. But how do you respond to this question? What is one goal that you have for yourself this year, especially with the changes that we've seen? What is one goal that continues to be relevant for you? So please go ahead and share, and feel free to, in fact, share your thoughts as well. You can unmute yourself and speak. Otherwise, please use the chat box. What is one goal that continues to be important for you? Catherine is saying to continue to better myself in personal and professional life. Great. Catherine, you want to share a specific example perhaps? When you say you want to get better, in what specific way do you want to get better? Then we have one goal I have for myself for this year is to have a more balanced life between work and personal. Tana is saying getting placed in a company as I am in my final year of engineering, okay. Sushma is saying to invest in myself, learning at work, and mindfulness for inner peace. Great. Supriya is saying stay afloat in crazy times and move from strength to strength. Great. I'm loving all of these answers. Okay. What else? Sophia is saying to improve focus and better time management. Fantastic. All right, great. So I think we have a really good example of a set of goals that we all have. So what we want to talk about today, Sherry saying get organized. Perfect. All right, so I think Preeti's already introduced me and shared a bit about my background with you. The only thing I would add is, and maybe in fact I will actually come back to this bio. Srividya is saying mindfulness and develop resilience. Great. So I grew up all around the world. I grew up in 6 different countries. US is where I actually ended up spending the most amount of time. I was there for close to 15 years. Worked in finance for a Wall Street firm for a large number of those years. Worked for an asset management firm in business and product development. And then went on to get my MBA. And right after that is when I say I hit a bit of a roadblock or an existential crisis in my life, because I knew I didn't want to go on living the way I was living. I didn't want to go on to do what everybody else around me was doing. And I knew it was up to me then to find out how exactly can I live my life in a way that really does bring me a greater sense of meaning. And to answer that question, I decided to move to India, which was a fairly dramatic decision at that time. This was about 7-8 years ago. And I'm so glad I made that decision because that is something I encourage all of us to do, is to really take some time out. And fortunately, I think all of us are getting that much needed break and pause right now, of course in unfortunate circumstances, but we are getting this pause where we can really reflect on some deeper questions for ourselves. And for me, 2 things happened once I moved to India. One is I began what I call a spiritual odyssey, and during that time I became acquainted with and started delving deeper and deeper into the philosophy of mindfulness, which I'm going to be sharing with you today. And the second thing, as I started to think about where I can really create a bigger impact, I realized over time, is in the space of women's leadership and helping women really live and lead in a way that feels true and authentic to them. And I think what we're talking about today ties both of those things together quite nicely. So let's talk more about that. And Shenomics, of course, is the company that we run, helping women live and lead from within. So today we'll quickly talk. We'll talk about this topic in 3 parts. In part 1, why mindful goal setting. 2, we'll share with you a very simple framework that all of you can apply to set more mindful goals. And then in part 3, we'll give you a system, a really easy but powerful system that you can use to actually execute those goals. Because setting goals is one thing, but as we all know, setting goals alone is not enough. We need a way to actually put those goals into motion and into action. So let's talk about how we can do that. All right, so part 1, why mindful goals? So here's another question for all of you. Now, when I asked you, what are the goals that you have? Many of you gave me some beautiful responses. Now, here's another question that perhaps takes us a little deeper, and I know will require some thought. But why do you think we set goals? I think it's an important question to ask. Why do we set goals? What are your thoughts there?
Better time management and focus on what we want to do.
Okay, better time management and to focus on what we want to do. Okay. We need something to work towards. Okay. To strive in life, to become a person, to accomplish with focus and purpose, it'll give us a direction, a compass to know ourselves, to achieve so we can improve from the present level. Having the impression to progress in life, to bring discipline and focus in our life, have a purpose. Fantastic, great. So here's the thing. I think all of you are giving us the right direction.
It gives a long-term vision and short-term motivation if we set goals.
It gives us a long-term vision and a
short-term motivation.
Short-term motivation to meet our goals. Catherine is saying to gain experience, to improve our confidence. So all of those answers are correct, and everything each and every one of you saying is absolutely valid. But if we really dig deeper into that, so let's peel the layers of the onion a little bit and really get to the core of it. What we see is that ultimately, what we are all, every one of us, what we're all seeking for, what we're all searching for is greater happiness. So every goal that we set in our lives, it is with that objective in mind, even though we may not say it explicitly. So if I take any of the goals that you shared, so I want to get a better job. Why? Because I feel it'll make me happier. I want to learn a new skill. Why? Because I feel I will be happier once I have that skill. I want to be more mindful, or I want more discipline in my life, or I want to be more focused. With everything that you say, one can easily complete that sentence by saying, because I feel that will bring a measurable amount of improvement in my level of happiness in my life. However, here's the thing. In our minds, we think, okay, let me, achieve one goal after another, almost, and check one box after another. And it feels like in our minds, it's like we're climbing this mountain. We're gonna do this, and then we're gonna get to that next step, and that next step, and that next step. And ultimately, we're gonna reach the mountaintop, and then we can say, hallelujah, I have made it. I feel great. I feel this great sense of achievement, and now I feel complete. So my question to all of you is, do we ever get to that point? Do you feel we ever get to that point where you feel complete? Srividya is saying no. Dhana is saying no. Maybe. Rashmi is saying maybe. Catherine is saying no. So all those of you who are saying no, why? Why do you think? So Amelia is saying because it's a journey, it's not a destination. Tana is saying because we get greedy. I don't think we can get there. We never stop looking for the next thing. Mostly no. Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. That is exactly what happens. So we think we're going up and up and up and up, but what really happens is we achieve one goal. And as soon as we achieve that goal, yes, of course, we experience a short burst of happiness. So yes, when you reach that milestone, you won that promotion, you learned that skill, you ran that marathon, you lost those 5 pounds, whatever the goal may be. Yes, you absolutely will feel elated and excited, but that sense of happiness very quickly dissipates. And the reason is because our minds very quickly, they adapt. So this is called hedonic adaptation. We very quickly adapt to our new circumstances, our new environment, our new situation in life. And the mind, as somebody said, gets greedy. That's a good choice of word. Or gets hungry for the next goal to go after, right? We immediately after hitting one goal, we get this sense of restlessness to then go after the next goal. And so on and on it continues. So what could be a different approach that doesn't make us feel like we're sort of running in that hamster wheel, if you will? And that is a mindful approach. So when we adopt a mindful approach, we don't just go after one goal after another, after another, after another. And we say, look, if happiness is what we're after, and indeed that is a worthy goal to have, let's not go directly after the things that we feel will make us happy. Instead, let's define for ourselves what to us, to each and every one of us, is the definition of a meaningful life. What are the meaningful goals that I want to go after? And in pursuit of that meaning, we will find that happiness. We will find not just that short burst of happiness, but a more sustained, sense of happiness that gives us greater fulfillment day after day after day. So here's the thing, in mindful goal setting, we don't begin the goal setting process by asking, what should I do? Typically in goal setting, that is the first question you ask. Okay, what is the goal you want to set? And then we begin from that point on. But in mindful goal setting, we don't begin with the doing. The doing is secondary to something else. So instead, the question that we do ask is, who should I be? And that is a very different question than what should I do? Who should I be? So why do we ask who should I be before what should I do? Because we are all, as you know, we're human beings before we are human doings. And unfortunately, because the way most of us, because of the cultural and the societal conditioning that we all get, where we're encouraged to just constantly be doing, and to constantly be thinking about doing, we often forget about the being aspect. But it begins first with the being. So what do I mean by that? Because I'm sure to some of you, you're wondering, okay, what does that even mean? What does it mean that I put the being before the doing? So to help you get clarity to this question, let me ask you this question. So everyone, excuse me, I would ask you, if you feel comfortable, to just close your eyes for 2 seconds. And as you close your eyes, think of a leader you deeply admire. Someone who just really stands out to you. So when you think about leaders or individuals or people who you are inspired by, who personally you are excited by, and you just connect with this person in many ways, What comes to your mind? Who comes to your mind? And why? And now open your eyes, and I would love for you to share with us, who did you think of and why? Who is someone you deeply admire and respect, and why? So let's hear some thoughts around this. Martha is saying Eileen Fisher, and why, Martha? Can you give us a reason? Vandana is saying Gandhi because of his great strength of character. Tana is saying someone who's into health and fitness. Atya is saying Kiran Bedi for her daring nature. Okay. Reshu is saying Dr. Fei Li because she's inspirational in the field of AI. I've heard her TED Talk, and I love how she rose from nothing to something great. One of my VP from past company, I liked her and admire her for her strength and thoughtful leadership. Mary Kay for pushing women into entrepreneurship. Michelle Obama because of her simplicity. My last manager because she was a go-getter and she would put herself in awkward position, would push our team forward and put me out of my comfort zone to improve me. Eileen Fisher because she owns a sustainable clothing business and a women empowerment platform that inspires and builds women's confidence. She leaves her mission through her mission and foundation and through her definition of self. Bhavna too for her confidence. Thank you. Great. All right. So here's another question for all of you. Those are some great answers, and indeed, everyone you have mentioned, these are all admirable individuals, and the reasons are also beautiful. What are you Are you starting to see a pattern here in terms of why we admire the people that we admire? Can anyone, even if you were to just look through all these answers that everyone has shared in the chat box, can anyone sense a pattern there? What are we seeing? What's in common? What do you see in common? Atya is saying the ability to achieve goals, okay. Catherine is saying confidence. Srividya, despite odds. The impact they have on others. Yes, so let me go, they have a clear and meaningful purpose. They connect with people, the ability, the values, the qualities we want in ourselves. Absolutely. I think you're all now moving in the right direction. So here's the thing, when you think about anyone that you deeply admire, take anyone, could be someone you know, could be someone you admire from afar, it always, without fail, without question, each and every time, it boils down to the way this person is leading their life, the way this person is living their life. And that is a function of what they believe in, and that is a function of what they stand for. Or in other words, the values that they choose to live their life by, as Sophia said, the values and the qualities. Notice, when you're talking about people, you're mentioning qualities like, she has confidence, or she's daring, or she's a visionary, or I love Michelle Obama because of her simplicity. Simplicity is a value that Michelle Obama has chosen to live her life by. So simplicity, confidence, these are all values or qualities that define a person's being. So going back to what what does it really mean to anchor yourself in the being before the doing, is to define and clarify for yourself, what are those qualities, what are those values that I want in myself that are core to my being. And notice if you scroll through all of these responses, hardly any of you talked about the doing. Nobody, notice when you talk about, so going back to Michelle Obama's example, you're not saying, oh, I admire Michelle Obama because, she launched X initiative or Y initiative, while she was the first lady, or because she did this and she did that. And absolutely, she did a lot in her life. Clearly, she wouldn't, she's a highly accomplished individual. But at the end of the day, that doing, all of that doing, that is the sum total of the doing that she has accomplished in her life, is still secondary to the being, the person that she is. And in fact, it is the being that has fueled, that has made possible all of the doing in her life. So that is why we're saying, let's begin first with being and then with doing, because the being is the thing that makes an impact on every single person around us. And the being is the thing at the end of the day that gives us personally, that sense of fulfillment, that sense of meaning and purpose that each and every one of us is looking for. So, and this of course ties back with ancient Greek philosophy as well, which I'm not going to go into too much. But the Greeks, thousands of years ago, I mean, they knew this to be true, that if you really want to find that enduring sense of meaning and happiness in your life, let's not anchor ourselves in our body, of course. The body changes, the mind also changes. If there's one thing that doesn't change that we want to anchor ourselves in, is the spirit. And the spirit they defined as the nous, and the nous is nothing but the collection of values that we each have. So that is where mindful leadership comes in as well, because it is the ability of all of us to live our life according to our highest values. And notice, values are very different from goals. So goals are about doing. Values are about being. Goals, once you're there, you're very quickly thinking, okay, what do I do next? What's next? What goal do I go after next? With values, you are never done. You're never going to say, okay, I'm done with courage, or I'm done with simplicity, or I'm done with honesty. Let me now move on to the next value. If something is important to you, you're going to continue working on it and deepening into it and becoming a bigger expression of it forever. Throughout your life, you will think about how you can live that value. Goals give us a short-lived happiness, as we've talked about, and as soon as we reach that goal, we're thinking, okay, what next? But with values, you don't get that kind of happiness where you're jumping up and down, but it does give you that quiet sense of contentment. You go to bed knowing and believing that you lived your day according to what is most important to you, and it gives you that sense of pride and that sense of peace in your heart. And that is the sustained gain through all everything that we're doing with mindfulness as well. And this is where mindfulness comes in. So mindfulness, just to define it, is the awareness that emerges through paying attention on purpose in the present and non-judgmentally, which sounds like a bit of a mouthful, but all it's saying is it's our ability to become more aware, quite simply just that. How can we become more aware in this present moment, of course, but also use this moment to dive within, create this space, create this stillness, create this pause, create this space for reflection, where we also become more aware of who we are and what matters most to us, what is most meaningful to us. And if we do that, then we can live from the inside out. I clarify first what is most important to me. And with that knowing, with that clarity, I then define for myself, okay, then what do I want to go out there in the world and do? And we don't do the reverse, which is ask, okay, what does the world want me to do? and then set our goals according to that. So having said that, now let's really put this into practice, and let's look at a framework that will allow us to set goals more mindfully. So we're going to use this pyramid here, the VGA pyramid. In this pyramid, we begin first with values, which defines our evergreen self. Then we move to goals, and then finally we look at actions. Now with values, what we are going to do is, and what we always do is we always begin with the end in mind. And for those of you who are familiar with Stephen Covey's work, The 7 Essential Habits of Successful People, you would know he talks about this. And it is indeed one of the most, in my opinion, the most important habit that any of us can have, is to always ask, if I fast forward, even if, like, it doesn't have to be, of course, the end of our life. I'm not saying we always, have that sort of, not necessarily, look at it in that way. But with everything, to always ask, okay, at the end of the day, what is the impact I want to make around the people, on the people around me? What is the impact I want to make in the world? How can I, be of greater service to people around me? How can I live my life in a way so that my being is the thing that really influences and creates a deep impact on everyone around me? And if you look at any leader that you admire, especially if we look at the people who have lived their life in an exemplary way, you'll find there was this very clear sense of intention around living their lives with a very clear set of values. So whether it's Steve Jobs, excuse me, you'll see here the words in blue. Working hard, love was the supreme virtue, humble, he liked to keep learning, he always tried. Again, what you're seeing here is that emphasis on being, on values. There's very little here, and this was a eulogy that was written by, or tribute written by his sister, and there was again, very little mention, or of any mention of anything that he did. Of course, he did a lot, but again, that at the end of the day, that's not the thing that really leaves that strong imprint in our hearts and in our minds. It is the being, the values. Princess Diana, again, great example. So again, in blue, you see sense of humor, joy for life, boundless energy. Nelson Mandela, courage, profoundly good human being, fierce dignity, unbending will, grace, good humor, and ability to acknowledge his own perfections. And this was a eulogy said in his honor by President Obama at his funeral. Again, very little mention of the doing. It was all about the being. So coming back to all of you, we'll do a very short guided mindfulness meditation right now. And in this case, we'll combine the meditation with a visualization, because what we'd love for you to do is use this moment to bring attention to what this could be for you. So when you think about your life and the impact you want to make, what is the thing that comes first to mind for you? So what I would say for this is, if you have the luxury and the freedom, I would invite you to sit with your back straight and close your eyes. Otherwise, even if you don't have, if there's a lot going around you and you don't have that kind of peaceful environment, you can still just simply pick a point on the screen in front of you and maintain your gaze on that point on the screen throughout the next 5 minutes, and simply follow my guidance. So if you feel comfortable, I would invite you now to just sit with your back straight and close your eyes. And we'll begin first by becoming aware of all the sounds in our environment. You might hear the AC or the fan in your room. You might hear some movement around you. With the next breath, I would now invite you to go within and bring your full awareness to your breath. And in particular, notice the physical sensations in your body as you breathe in and out. Bring your attention to your stomach and just notice the gentle movement in your stomach as you breathe in and out. Now take your attention up to your chest. And just notice how your chest gently expands as you breathe in and contracts as you breathe out. Take your attention up your throat, to your face, and to your nose. Then bring your full awareness to your breath as you breathe in and out. And if your attention wanders, simply acknowledge that it has and keep bringing your attention back to your breath. Now take your attention up to your head. And now we'll engage in a small visualization. Imagine it's the end of the year, the end of 2020, and you are now looking back at the year that has passed. You're looking back at all the things you did, the highs and the lows. And you're thinking back to the one thing that you are the most proud of. And as you look back, you think, yes, it was a challenging year. Yes, there was a lot happening in the world. Yes, there was a lot of chaos. Yes, we were not in ideal circumstances. But still, I feel a great sense of pride because despite it all, what I'm most proud of is that I showed up. I showed up as the woman that I want to be. And when you think about how you showed up this year, what is that thing that is coming to your mind? How are you showing up? What are you displaying? What is that one value that is defining this year for you? What is that value? What is that quality? What is that thing that defines your being that you want to express this year so that at the end of the year, when you look back, you feel that sense of pride, that sense of happiness, that sense of contentment in your heart. And when you have that image, simply freeze that image in your mind and in your heart. Take a deep breath. And whenever you feel ready, gently and slowly, you can open your eyes. So, this, of course, what we just did was a very, very short practice. And this is a question one you can keep coming back to when you have more time and space for stillness and for silence. And in fact, I would really strongly encourage you to come back to this question. But the question is, if there is one value that you want to define yourself by this year, I know it's a tough year. I know it's not ideal. But despite it all, if there is one value that you want to express, and right here on the screen, we just have a few examples. This is by no means a full and complete list. But if there was any value that you want to be an expression of, what would you want people to say about you? That, yes, it was a tough year, but she showed so much kindness through it all. She showed resilience through it all. She showed true leadership. She still maintained her sense of positivity through it all. She worked harder than she could have, she ever has. She showed joyfulness, as Rashmi is saying. She showed perseverance, or good humor, or discipline, or gratitude. The list is endless, but what I want each of you to really center on, to really focus on, is what is that one thing for you? So let's begin with the end in mind, the end being the end of the year. we don't know what the end of the year is going to look like, but perhaps the situation may not be very different. But what is that one thing that is standing out for you? And that is what you want to really focus on. So what is that one value that you want to demonstrate over the next 6 months or till the end of the year? And what, as you see on the screen here, we say aspirational because we want this process to be one of becoming who you want to become. Which is why we say aspirational, because there may be values that you are already practicing. So you may already be someone who is very hardworking, or very, someone who's very positive, or maybe, disciplined, right? So perhaps those are values that already come to you. What you want to focus on here is not the value that you're already expressing, but something that you want to express more of. Because, and the reason why we're saying, what do you want to express more of? Because in the process of expressing more of that value is how you deepen that being. In that process is how you become more of that woman that you want to become. All right, so we have some really, really beautiful answers in the chat box. Srividya saying perseverance and resilience. Rashmi, gratitude and aliveness. Vaishu is saying patience and consistency. Gahana is saying integrity and perseverance. All beautiful answers. So for the rest of you as well, please just make sure you have that one answer. Olga is saying bravery and consistency. Beautiful. Shweta is saying leadership. Martha is saying leadership and love. Thank you. Great, fantastic. So Sherry is saying kindness and gratitude. Dana is saying discipline. Great. All right. So as long as everyone has one thing that is really standing out for them that they want to express more of, that is the thing you need. Vandana is saying love and joyfulness. So I'm going to skip past some of these slides and move to this next portion of this pyramid. So once we've clarified what is that one value, now we get to the doing. So once that we've defined, okay, what is that one thing we want to anchor our being around for the rest of this year, now let's get to the doing. So how do we convert the being into doing? We are going to do that with goals. So let me give you an example of this, and perhaps I can give you some personal examples. So courage, excuse me, is a core value for me. And it doesn't matter, if we're in a crisis situation or not in a crisis situation. This is something that is never going to change for me. It is an enduring value that I want to keep coming back to. I want my life to be about courage. I want my life to be about me constantly pushing myself out of my comfort zone, doing things that feel uncomfortable, and really doing that consistently year after year after year. So including this year. But I want to give you an example from last year. So last year when I thought about courage, I thought about, okay, so how can I become a greater expression of courage? And so for me, with the kind of work that I am doing, it's very important that I practice greater thought leadership, in the sense that I really go out there and express my thoughts more, express my views more, as I'm doing right now, which is really wonderful. But really to seek out as many platforms as possible to be able to spread this message far and wide. And for me, this is an act of courage. And of course, I should mention, whatever value that you define, you will be defining it in your own way, and it's going to have a different meaning for each and every one of us. And for me, having a stronger voice, having a bigger voice, and a bigger platform on which to express that voice is an act of courage. which is why thought leadership is a goal that I set for myself last year, and it continues to be a goal that I'm continuing with this year. And I expressed that in a number of ways. So one way, small way, was of course to just write more, to find as many avenues as possible to really put myself out there and express how I think and feel, especially around these topics of mindfulness and women's leadership. So I'm just giving you an example of how I took a value and I converted it into a concrete goal. So we're moving from being to doing. I hope this is starting to make sense. I'll give you one more example, and this might be a fun example since we're all women here. So the other core value for me, which is, again, it doesn't matter crisis or no crisis, is going to continue to be a value for me, is mindfulness. And again, I thought about, this was middle of last year, I thought about where can I practice greater mindfulness in my life other than, of course, the morning practice of my meditation, but how can I practice mindfulness in other areas of my life? And one thing that really stood out to me was that in the area of consumption, I was not being very mindful, especially when it came to something as simple as clothing. I realized I was becoming a borderline shopaholic, and I was not being very mindful about how I was shopping and how I was, just really just consuming. And so I decided I would go on a 500-day shopping fast. So this goal, by the way, I set for myself in June of last year. So now I've completed 11 months. I think I've completed, I completed 300 days a month ago. So I'm still going strong with this goal. So I decided instead of shopping for new clothes, what I'm going to do for the next 500 days is start recycling clothes that I already have. Excuse me. And basically just reinvent clothing from my own closet. So everything that you see here on the screen, every single outfit is a recycled outfit. These are all old saris. In some cases, these are saris that are as old as like 20 years old, or even some are, I think one of them is 30 years old. One, of course, was donated by my mom. And I'm taking these old saris that my mom didn't want to wear anymore, including my own saris that I knew I'm not going to wear, and I just converted them into clothes that will, that I will enjoy wearing. So it serves my purpose of not buying more and of not shopping more and creating more strain on the environment, not to mention strain on my own closet. So again, I'm giving you an example of value, mindfulness, and how I took that value and expressed it out there in the world through a goal that was meaningful, a goal that challenged me, a goal that in the process of pursuing that goal, it is helping me become more of the woman that I want to become in the world, which is someone who really lives and leads with mindfulness. So just wanted to give you another example. And thank you everyone for all the really sweet comments. I'm going to come back to this meditation one. So now back to all of you. So what is now, each of you have mentioned a value that you want to express more of this year, irrespective of what's happening around us. So what I want to ask each and every one of you is what kind of goal, and challenge yourself. This is where you really get to challenge yourself. What kind of challenging goal can you set that will help you become a greater expression of that value that each and every one of you outlined a moment ago? Whether that's love, whether that's joyfulness, whether that's discipline, kindness, gratitude, leadership, love, integrity, bravery, perseverance, resilience. And this, of course, may take you some time to think about. I wouldn't want to rush you either, but think about what's coming top of mind right now. What is that one goal, if you anchor it in that value, anchor it in your being, that's really going to give you that sense of pride at the end of the year.
Unmute yourself and also speak up.
Yeah, please feel free to unmute yourself and share your thoughts. And if you have any questions, also feel free to continue to ask those questions throughout. We don't have to wait all the way till the end.
Bhavna, I think one of the challenging goals that I struggle with is focus because of multitasking or, that we are in today's world.
Sorry, one of the goals you're struggling with is multitasking?
Yeah, so the challenge is to focus. So one of my goals is to just have focus.
Oh, focus. Okay. Okay.
Right, because of the multitasking that we get into.
Okay, so focus is a great, I think it's a great value as well as a great doing. Now let me ask you, Preeti, what do you think? So if focus is something you want to become a greater expression of, if you want to increase your ability to focus, what do you think something that could help you to that extent?
So it's mostly the increasing the ability to focus. It's, I think, what I believe that would help me to greater extent is, achieve these goals or, have a very strong conclusion of these goals, right? Some of the times is like, okay, like I want to do a marathon and I want to do 10 things in my mind and keep shifting my focus from one to other. How do we bring in those focus to make sure?
That's a great question, Preeti. What I would say to you is to and in mindful goal setting, the important thing is to keep it simple. So you ask yourself. So again, let's just take one thing. You ask yourself, okay, what is that one value that I want to practice more of this year? Okay, so let's say you say it is focus. And you're saying, okay, there's so many ways in which there's so many things I can go after. Mindfulness is also about, it's also about letting go. So it's also about, in the process of simplifying, asking, okay, if I was, what do I let go of? How do I prioritize? I know there are 5 things that I want to do. I can completely empathize with you because I usually have a list of 10 goals at any given point of time that I want to pursue as well. But I constantly have to ask myself this as well, that if there was this one thing, just one thing, let's say this year there was just only one thing I get the opportunity to practice, to achieve, what would be that one thing that will make me feel like, what, this was a successful year. I didn't get to do all 10 things, but I got to do this one thing. And maybe you want to just ask yourself that and begin there.
Okay, I think to that one thing that you were speaking up, we do have a question from Shreya who's saying, how many goals do you focus on, or how many goals can
so
have?
There's no I would say there's no rule there. For me, I always begin the year or at any point I always ask, okay, what are my core values? And for me, there are, through a process now of introspection and reflection of several years, I've boiled it down to 5 values. And at each point of time, I'm always asking, how do I become a greater expression of those values? So at any given point of time, there would be 5 goals that I would be pursuing, because each of them are linked to my 5 core values. So I think it really goes back to that step 1 and asking yourself, what are the values that you want to express more of? And then tie or link every single goal to that.
Okay. And I think one other question we are also getting, Bhavna, is, while you talk about values, how do you basically, how do you differentiate core values from usual values? Is there a method to figure out them? This is from Srividya.
So, I mean, there are many ways in which one can come to that clarity, but think of your core values as your biggest non-negotiables. That's something that you just, even if you have to compromise on a few other values, let's say, but your core values are, whether that's a set of one, whether it's one value, two values, three values, or five values, no matter what, that is something you never want to compromise on. That's something never you never want to. It's just simply non-negotiable for you. And when you think about this ideal person that you want to be, this ideal woman that you want to be, those five, however many, three or four or five values are sort of the core, the anchors, the outline that define that ideal version of you. So there's no, I mean, is there a method? It's really about continuing to just reflect on, who do I want to be? Who do I want to be that will make me proud of who I am? What is the kind of impact I want to make on people around me? It's really a constant process of asking those questions again and again and again.
Cool. Thanks. We have Amulya. I think she has a question. Amulya, I've unmuted yourself. Unmuted you. Please go ahead with your question.
Yeah, thank you, Preeti. Thank you so much. So, hi, Bhavna.
Hi.
Bhavna, yeah, in today's corporate sector, we do see a lot of people, keep saying and practicing the skill, what we call it as a diplomacy, right? But I'm a person who is an assertive person, where I don't believe on a skill called diplomacy, because that is something which would not be making a person reliable at the end of the day. So is that something it's very much necessary, an attitude that we have to cultivate in order to survive ourselves, in order to overlook few of the situations that we encounter?
So I just want to make sure I'm understanding your question correctly. So you're saying, so you are someone, it sounds like, you're very clear about who you are, and you don't sort of mince any words. You're not trying to, you are who you are. You say what you feel.
Right.
Okay. So and you're asking, is that the way one should be?
Is that the diplomacy is something that we have to cultivate in order to be, in order to survive in a corporate sector? Because sometimes, the assertiveness is taken something as an arrogance, sometimes, that's also a very good attitude to be assertive. So on the other way, it's taken as a arrogance. So, I mean, how can we tackle these kind of situations with these?
So, I would say, being unapologetic about who you are is something I personally and very strongly believe in. So absolutely, whoever you are, and if you are very forthright and about being who it is that you are, saying what it is that you feel, and doing what it is that you feel like doing, yes, I think that's a very strong place to begin with. Having said that, the second part of your question, should one be diplomatic? I think one can really only answer that question in relation to what you are trying to accomplish. So it depends on, so when you're saying, it depends on what is that goal you're going after, or what is the objective, or what is the thing that you're trying to achieve. And then in relation to that, you have to then ask, what is going to help me achieve what I want to achieve? And of course, does that mean you compromise your values in order to achieve what you want to achieve? No, absolutely not. But does that mean, in some cases, that you prioritize a certain value over and above something else? Yeah, it could mean that. So I think it is very situation specific, and you want to really ask yourself that question. In relation to whatever specific situation that you're in, what are the values that I want to express in the situation? But at the same time, what am I really trying to accomplish here? What am I trying to achieve here? And does that mean I reprioritize one value over another in order to still accomplish what I want to accomplish? So it requires not, again, like I said, it doesn't mean that you compromise, but it could mean being, could mean being skillful around maybe, prioritizing one over another, if that makes sense. Great. Okay, Amelia saying great. Atia saying, how do you tackle colleagues who start thinking ill of you when you try to stand up for yourself? So, one thing I'd say with everything that we're talking about, with every single thing we're talking about, we're going to keep bringing the focus back to ourselves, because there's very little we can do about how other people react to us, or how other people, they may think of us, or what they may, how they may react or respond in any given situation. So in every situation, if we're trying to approach it mindfully, we always bring it back to ourselves and ask, what can I do in the situation? How do I respond to the situation in a way that sits well with me, in a way that makes me feel proud? And knowing that once I've done that, then I'm living in a way that is, that feels right to me. And yes, I cannot control what the other person thinks of me, but as long as what's most important is that I think of myself in a way that gives me a sense of pride and happiness, and am I acting in accordance with how I wish to show up and how I wish to think of myself. So always keep bringing the focus back to yourself, because that is the only thing we can control.
Another question, Bhavna. Do you recommend setting smaller goals or getting risky by setting higher ones?
Okay, so we're going to, since I think we have just a small amount of time, right? Because the next part actually addresses that question. So let's quickly move to that, because that is very, very important. All right. So once you've set the goal, and this ties in beautifully with this question of, okay, so now how do we put those goals into action? So here's the thing. When it comes to the goal, here's what I say. When it comes to the goal, let's not limit ourselves. Let's not think small. Let's not shortchange ourselves by thinking small. When it comes to our goals will really excite us to step into that higher version of ourselves, that best version of ourselves, only if it's challenging us in some way. And it will only challenge us in some way if it is a big, whatever feels big to you. And again, that definition is going to be different for different people. However, once you've set that big and challenging goal, then here's the thing. Then how do we go about accomplishing it? That is where we then change the focus. So, of course, once you've set the goals, the next thing is, how do you turn those goals into actions? How do you convert them into actions? Because that is when you bring it back into the present moment. And what we say is, when it comes to those actions, especially with mindful goal setting, is we find a way to turn those actions into a habit. Why do we turn them into a habit? So that we don't even think about what we are, we don't even have to use a lot of cognitive mental space to think about what it is that we're doing, but it just becomes habitual. It just becomes who we are. It just becomes part of us. And how do we turn anything into a habit? We make it small. So this is where we start to think small. We don't think small when it comes to the goal. We think small when it comes to converting that goal into an action. That is a very, very important differentiation. So I want to say that again. Let the goal be as challenging as you can make it. But when you're thinking about converting that goal into an action, that is when you make it small. In fact, you make it as tiny as you can make it. And we'll talk a little bit about this in a moment. You make it specific and you make it attractive. So what do we mean by this? So small. So I'll just share a quick piece of research here. This is by BJ Fogg, who is a professor and researcher at Stanford University. And he recently, just a couple of months ago, came out with this book called Tiny Habits. So if any of you are looking for books to read on this, I highly recommend Tiny Habits. And what he's really saying there is, look, in order for us to do anything, we need two things. We need motivation, and we need to be able to do it. We need to know how to do it. So motivation and ability. And at the end of it, what he's saying is, let's not rely on motivation so much. In fact, motivation is highly overrated. There's like thousands and thousands of books on motivation and how we can motivate ourselves to achieve our goals. And what BJ Fogg is saying is, forget about motivation. Instead, how about you make the thing that you want to do so small and so simple that you wouldn't even need any motivation to do it. Because it's so tiny, because it's so small, you just go out and do it. So basically what we're saying is make the action that is related to your goal so small that no part of you will want to say no. So again, I'm going to go back to my own example. So when it came for me, I mentioned courage. The goal was thought leadership. What was the tiny action I give myself? Is not that I'm going to write an article every single day, not that I'm going to write a book every day. No, it's just about writing 100 words, because I wanted to get into the rhythm, and I wanted to get into the sort of just the habit of writing. And 100 words it's such a small goal, but yet it helps me pursue that goal that is important to me. So you set yourself a really, really small, tiny action. And by all means, if you feel like doing more that day, go ahead and do more. But your measure of success for that day is just that tiny action that you're going to take. Again, with mindfulness, of course, here in this case, it was in action. It was every day looking at my closet and seeing, okay, not what, how can I appreciate today? What can I appreciate? Something that I already own. What do I rewear, or what can I repurpose? And that was the tiny action that I'm taking on my 500-day shopping fast. So small daily action. So I want to eat healthy becomes a small change. Let me start by drinking a bottle of water a day. I want to write becomes I'm just going to write a paragraph each day. I want to run a marathon becomes I'll just run 5 laps each day, or maybe just 2 laps. It can be as small and as tiny as you want to make it. The idea is to completely eliminate any resistance that might come from your mind. Because, and this is a really powerful idea, and this also comes from the work of James Clear, who has also written a fantastic book on habits called Atomic Habits, which another book that I would highly recommend. And he talks about this really powerful concept of that when you make the action so small and so tiny, and then you take that action, every time you take that action, what you are doing is you are casting a vote for the woman that you want to be, for your future identity that you want to take on, the person that you want to become a higher expression of. So every time you take that action, you are strengthening that identity. So every time you turn that alarm clock off, let's say you want to start waking up, even let's say 5 minutes earlier, every time you turn that alarm clock off, you're strengthening whatever current identity you have. And every time you get up and you put on those shoes and go for that one lap around the block, or you do that one Surya Namaskar, you are strengthening that identity that you would want to take on. And if you do that day after day after day after day, and you start to see this chain forming in your mind to the point where your mind just becomes addicted to this, and you wouldn't want to break the chain at any point. And it's entirely up to you how long you want this chain to be. So you may say, okay, I'm going to take this tiny action for the next 3 days. or I'm going to take this tiny action for the next 5 days. However long you want that chain to be, just create that chain, because in the process of creating that chain, you're deepening, you're strengthening that identity. And I'll just give you a small example here. So meditation is, of course, something I've been practicing for a while, but I wanted to establish consistency. So I started using this app a couple of months ago. So this is an old screenshot. I started using this app a couple of months ago called Insight Timer, because it tells me the number of consecutive days. So as you can see here, it says 45 consecutive days. Now I'm, of course, on day 109, I believe, as of this morning. But this is now, my mind is addicted to seeing this number go up and up and up and up. And I want to take it all the way to 300 at the end of the year. So basically what we're saying is, when you do this, when you take that tiny action again and again and again, so we're starting with the being, we move to the doing, but in the process of doing that, taking that action every day, you are strengthening your being. So I want to eat healthy becomes I make healthy choices. This is who I am. This is not just something I want to be in the future. This is who I am. I want to write a book becomes I am a writer, because I'm showing up every day to write. I want to run a marathon becomes I am a runner, or I am fit. I am someone who values health and fitness. So something you want in the future becomes who you are today, in the present moment. And that is where the powerful shift happens. Moving from being to doing, and then back to being. So the last question I want to ask you today, and this is a big one. So you have your value, you have your goal. Now what you want to ask yourself is, what is the smallest action? Tiny, tiny, and make it as tiny as you can possibly make. So with the goal, we ask you to be as ambitious as you can be. But with the action, we ask you to think the reverse, think as tiny as you can think. And think of what is the small action that you can take on a daily basis that will allow you to work on that goal that is tied to your value, and that will help you become the woman that you want to become at the end of the day.
Please unmute yourself or drop the questions on the chat box.
Okay, so Catherine is saying to read. So Catherine, again, I would want you to make it very, very specific. So you might say, I will read 1 page every day, and specify the time when you will read. I'm going to meditate for 5 minutes every morning. Fantastic. Please specify the time. Specifying the time will really anchor it in your mind. And eventually, Sri Vidya, absolutely, the small habit needs to become a bigger one, so you can meet your goal. But what we say is, let's establish consistency before we get to intensity. So yes, eventually we will intensify, and thank you for making that point. But let's establish consistency first, so it becomes habitual. And then by all means, let's amp up the intensity. Rashmi, write a gratitude journal before sleeping every day. Amulya, to cultivate patience. I want to exercise. I want to do exercise, waking up at 6 in the morning. Every morning after I brush my teeth. Okay, that's the time you were specifying. To make time during the day, lunch break, to read a chapter. Okay, and Catherine, here I would say make it even smaller. Chapter sounds fantastic and it's beautiful, but just to eliminate any resistance that may come from the mind, let's say on a busy day, when you might feel like, oh, maybe I'll skip lunch today, or maybe I don't have time to read that chapter. Even on those days, if you make your goal small enough, you'll still do it. So if it's a page or 2 pages, you'll still do it. I'm just reading Vidika's question. It's a great question. You know, and again, you know, it's something like this is it's so individual and it's so personal because there are some of us who are very ambitious and who like to accomplish a lot. And so what do we do in that case? So I would say, so if I take my own example, I think every year I'd like to challenge myself a little bit more. So whatever I've accomplished last year, like this year, I want to become a greater expression of those values. So I will, for me, it may not be about the number of things that I'm doing. So it's not that, you know, last year I did 10 things, so this year I'll do 15 things. If last year I did 10 things, this year also I may do 10 things, but those 10 things that I do, I want those 10 things to be a deeper and a greater expression of who I am. So if last year, so let me just give you an example. So last year I said an expression of courage for me was thought leadership, to be able to write more. This year, courage continues to be a value. Thought leadership continues to be a goal. But the way I want to express that is now through more of a visual medium. So we're creating a set of videos which we're going to be putting out very soon, where I'm, you know, visually sharing a lot of ideas around all of these topics that we're talking about right now. And because for me, that's an even greater expression of courage, because that means you're putting yourself out there even more. So I think, I don't know what's an easy way to answer your question, but I would say don't get caught up so much with quantity. Think more about the quality of what you're setting out to achieve every year, and everything that you're achieving, is it allowing you to become a greater expression of who you want to be? That's really what I keep coming back to. And yes, absolutely. How do you not get into the comfort of a small habit once we've established this? Is increase the intensity. Once you've gotten into the habit of reading 1 page a day, get to 2 pages, get to 3 pages. And even as you're establishing the habit, you'll find that, you know, this tiny habit is just to set a small benchmark. So you can give yourself that measure of success. So you can give yourself that check for the day, or pat on the back for the day. But that doesn't mean that, you know, I set out to open a book and I read 1 page. But I have more time and I feel like reading 2 chapters. By all means, read as much as you want, or do as much as you want. But your measure of success for the day, the thing that allows you to give yourself a check, is just that small benchmark. It's only to eliminate the resistance in the mind. But by all means, increase the intensity if that is what you feel like doing. So you put on your shoes, you tell yourself you're only going to go for maybe 1 run around the block. You feel like running for 30 minutes, by all means, go at it, go crazy. So I'm just looking at the time, Preeti. Should we ask?
Yeah, I think we can take 1 more questions and then we can wrap it up. I hope that should be fine with you.
Yes, absolutely. So just looking at a few questions, any references, apps you want to give on starting mindful meditation? 2 apps that I've used personally that I would recommend. One, of course, that I'm using currently is Insight Timer. And the other one is Headspace. So I'll just type these out here. And Headspace. But those 2 are very, very user-friendly, and they have Insight Timer in particular has a wide variety of free meditations that you can begin with, which is fantastic. So the only, I don't believe so, but one in terms of tracking, I'm just going to quickly, oh yes, it's called Streaks. So the app that I use to track all of my habits is called Streaks. It just gives you a check. Again, that's all it is. Whatever habits, small goals you're setting for yourself, small actions you want to set for yourself every day, you can give yourself a check for the day. It's really simple, but again, that's all you want. You want to be able to give yourself that check for the day.
Cool. I think we can go with one last questions, and then we'll do a quick group photo and a thank you note as well. Bhavna, I'm sorry, I think we're really running short, but if there's something else that...
And also when it comes to letting go of something, again, think small. So we never, like, you don't want to, so I'm just looking at Hannah's question, how to let go of a habit. Similarly, just like we build our habits in small, tiny steps, letting go can also be tiny. So if you're drinking tea twice a day, maybe you still drink tea twice a day, but instead of 1 full cup a day, you drink half a cup a day. And then you move to, 1 cup a day and so forth. So think small. I think this whole thing, I have to tell you, it works beautifully for me. From my personal experience, I can tell you, if you always think small actions, tiny steps, you'll find where one can, in the end, ironically, accomplish a lot more. You can achieve all these big, audacious goals that we all have, but let's do it by thinking small. It really helps. All right, so I just want to quickly then wrap this up and really leave you with these takeaways. So always begin with your values. Always ask, what kind of woman are you trying to be? Set goals that are in alignment with your values, and always convert those goals into tiny and small actions so it becomes a habit. And again, coming back to this big idea that I want to leave you with, which is always, if you're doing this mindfully, keep coming back to being. Before the doing, always come back to being. So thank you, everyone. I hope this was useful. And Preeti, if there's one just quick announcement, if you'll allow me to make. We, as Preeti, as you know, we've launched this fellowship program for, we have this fellowship program in place for women below 30. So if any of you are below 30 and would like to go on a mindful leadership journey with us, and Lean In Women in Tech, of course, is a partner, which we're very happy about. I'm sharing the URL here. Please go to the fellowship page, check it out. The deadline is May 15th. We may extend it actually till the end of the month. So please go ahead and check that out and do apply.
We are very proud to partner with Bhavna, and previously also we have seen our members taking advantage of it, and we have had quite a big benefit for all of you. So please go apply for it.
Saying please extend that. I think we most likely will. We will extend the deadline to the end of the month. But please go ahead and check that out and apply. And thank you everyone for all the wonderful, lovely comments.
Thank you very much. And I think I want everyone to just stay by, and Bhavna, if you can stop sharing for the last bit that we have. Thank you so much. Just stop my live streaming.